Okay, welcome back for the second part of the Smoke 2013 webinar. I'm Quinn Richardson and I'll be your tour guide today. Remember, if you missed part 1, you can find it on the Autodesk Media and Entertainment webcast series page. Previously, we did a pretty comprehensive overview of the interface. We then covered the effects ribbon and effects in the timeline. Now we go for the deep dive into Connect Effects in action. So let's get started. And to do that, I'm actually going to grab some other pieces of footage. See if our bookmarks, go to our bookmarks, go up, and I'm actually going to grab that whole promo folder. Back to our timeline and open that up. Open one clip as a sequence. This is just a background image, and I'm going to take a shot of our talent, shot on red, and drop it in there. So as we can see, it is actually 1280 by 675, and our timeline is 1920 by 1080. So it's putting a resize on it to make it fit to the timeline resolution. So from there, if we wanted, we could step in and really edit our pen and scan. And actually, I want this footage to be larger than our timeline. So to do that, we're going to go Promo, select our footage, go to debearing, and I'm going to set it to half premium. And now drag that in again. Okay, go back to our timeline. Go to the head of our clip. Oops. And drag our footage in. Again, it's adding a resize because now it is larger than our timeline. It is 2560 by 1350. And I'm just going to scrub down and trim off some of the back end. Move our positioner up. Just going to right click. A bit more resolutions dealing with. Yeah. Select both clips and just toss them away. Great. Back up to on our footage. And I want to see her a little more in action. There, that's actually a better pose. In fact, let's trim it there. There we go. Select both. Well, actually, I can just do this. Toss them off. Alright, now our clip is much more easy to deal with, much more to the length that I want. And let's take these into Connect Effects. I'm going to select both of them. I'm going to do Effects, Create Connect Effects. Now since it had a resize in the timeline, in Connect Effects it automatically builds that. It also pipes everything into an action node. And an action node, and we'll cover that in a few minutes, is really a super node unto itself. It is our 3D compositing environment. It has lighting functions. It can handle 3D data. It can handle 3D geometry. It's really a workhorse and a super node. It has so many functions built into it, and we'll touch on that soon. But first, let's just cover some of the standard kind of bread and butter nodes that you might use in Connect Effects. Let's grab a piece of footage from our library over here, from Media Library, and go through some of these basic nodes. You have your 2D histogram and 2D transform. 2D transform being pretty common. It's really almost like a subset of our axis node. you have your position, rotation, scale, shear, and changing your center. So that, say if you want to change your center and do the rotation, it's going to act as the hinge for it, which can be handy. Also within the 2D transform, it has some camera shake built into it. You can modify those parameters as much as you care, salt them to taste, as well as stabilization. So it really acts as you know, a tracker and stabilizer right within the 2D transform. Really great, very handy. Let's go through these. Action, we just touched on that, is our super node that we're going to come back to. Brilliant. Automat generates a quick map based on luminance. You can tweak the parameters in it to generate what you need. So you have a min, a max, and then a gain, just to get that black and white image to pipe into something else as a matte channel. We have the auto-stabilize node. Makes the whole stabilization thing simple. It does auto-stabilization. So you hook it all up, you just say analyze, and go. If you have something moving through the frame, you can pipe a matte in to tell it, auto-stabilizer, just ignore this guy walking through the frame because you want to stabilize the background. A ton of options to tweak that, because nothing is completely automatic. So, but this is about as close as you can get. That's the auto-stabilize node. Average lets you blend frames. I'm trying to see if we have something with a lot of movement in it. Let's look at this. See this water. Okay, the water has a bit of movement in it. Averages the frames over a specified period. So this is just over 2. We can set it to, say, 8. And you can see it starts becoming blurry. What it's doing is it's doing a uniform average of 8 frames together, of 8 frames over the past frames. 8 past frames into the current frame, sorry. To give you one frame. And it gives a kind of like very time-lapsey motion. I've seen it also used to help negate grain by averaging, say, your green plate or a clean plate over it. Blend and comp. Those of you that have used composite that comes along with Maya will know that. It's basically a blend and composite mode node. Very handy. Blur. Blur sounds super simple, and to a degree it is. It does what it says it does as advertised. It blurs things out. But you have many options. Not only do you have a standard Gaussian blur, you have box, defocus, giving you more of a camera feel, directional, which can, sometimes you need that effect, radial. I want to do the amount, not the center of it. The center of it can be moved around. And we have radial stamp, which gives you the amount, but then also gives you a bit of rotation to it, and how to offset that. Gain functions as well. So that looks like it has some great creative possibilities in it as well. Let's do a quick run through. Okay, we have blur, bump displace, which is great. It'll take a luma channel and create a bump map look onto it. Burn in letterbox, so if you have to mask, if your final product is being masked to, say, 235, or maybe it was shot 4:3 and you're masking it to be in a HD aspect ratio, 16:9, you might want to burn that letterbox in. Timecode if you're doing an offline, a rough cut, or some kind of reference. The color corrector and color warper, both of which we touched on before in the timeline, now they have their own nodes. That's always very handy. Color curves, which are used typically to suppress colors, in hand in hand with one of the keys, and I can kind of show that quickly here. Give it a moment. There we go. Oh, made 2 of them. I only need 1. So a quick demonstration of what that can do. So what we'll do is we want to plot that color. We can see where it falls in the spectrum. Say we want to suppress that color in some way. We'll pick that in here, set that, and we will set a key there, and we'll grab that, start bringing that down, and you can see all the oranges in that spectrum falling off. I'm sure actually color curves could actually be used creatively in a number of ways too, whether it's suppressing a color or maybe it's enhancing a color or enhancing a range of colors. But that's color curves, something that's just really not talked about as much. Color frame, always need that. Combine will let you combine, combine channels really, and it also gives you some color space options. So it's your front, back, and matte all combined into one. Let's see, we have compound. Again, this is kind of similar to average that we talked about before. And then there's damage. Damage actually is one of our newer things that came by way of flame effects. Before and now it is its own node. And it has a ton of brilliant presets. You have your projector thing where you can see some color aberration. Black and white with the scan lines. We have Super 8 footage. And all of these, all the presets can be modified. You can add hairs into it, take jitter out. Again, modified to taste to really make it your own. Let's keep running through this. We have Deal, which will separate your clip into multiple clips. Deform, another great one that another great kind of effects thing that look a bit heavy-handed, but then used in the right way, I think can really give you some brilliant creative options. This has a number of things within its deform. The crumple, which I kind of like the most. It has this very oily water reflection look. Magnify, very simple thing that does what it says it does. Pinch, just the opposite of magnify. Ripple. Twirl, and again we have a lot of GUI widgets in here too to grab things and manipulate it. And wave, and again a ton of parameters below to really change it up and make it not look so preset. So that was the form. We have degrain, so if you have something too grainy, you can degrain it, bring it down. Deinterlace, so if you have some really field issues, you could use that. Denoise, very similar to degrain, but I believe it actually works a bit faster, and I'm not sure how it works on film grain itself, but it's a very it gives you a full spectrum, and you can tell it to denoise. Fortunately and unfortunately, the clip we have here really doesn't have that much grain in it, so you can put a thing in and do a grain analysis for it to remove it. Really a great tool. Not used as much, I would say, probably with some of the digital acquisition, but low light areas, when you start getting noise, I can see it coming in very handy. Depth of field, if you have a depth pass, you can use a depth of field node, which is great, especially with CG material. Then you can do really kind of your focus in post. Difference matte, and that's to compare two images to create a matte. If you have a clean plate and someone walking through it, you can pull your difference matte between the two. Edge detect does what it says. It kind of detects edges, and I've used this in conjunction again with keyers a number of times, generally killing the color and making it mono, and then working with this to really get your edge. If you feed a matte into it, you can really just get the edge of the matte, and that helps you create like a blend matte between your key, your green screen footage, and your key. And maybe we'll use that in a minute with our talent at the top. So we have field merge again to help maybe with some field issues. Filter, flip, glow. Glow's an interesting and nice one. It's great when you can put a mask into it. And actually, since we're in the G's, we'll just grab a G mask as well and use that to affect our glow. So let's step into the G mask. Let's look at the front. So you can see down here, G mask front. And we'll go add and just do a simple mask around person looking ever so comfortable. And let's soften that a little. And then let's look at our glow. Oh, helps that Gmask has color. Let's see. There we go. That's what I want to see. And let's actually take this and set it to the outside. So there's our glow. In the glow, you can affect the color. You can change it up. Again, everything really modified to taste. And you know, always encouraged just to make it your own. So the glow is a glow tool with a ton of parameters to really give you something and let you be able to you know, make it yours. Gmask, we'll leave that there for a moment. We have a couple keyers here, and so you can key in a couple different color spaces. For whatever reason, say it's not working in RGB, you can move to HLS, which is hue, lightness, saturation, or YUV, which is the luminance spectrum. We have our traditional Luma keyer, a channel keyer, which is based on a color channel, and then we have our RGB CMYL. So it takes two color spaces and, you know, works them all into one and averages your sample into there to get your pick of color. And if that doesn't work, then you can also hit M for the master keyer, which is what we used in the timeline before. Really brilliant tool, very strong. One of my favorite tools actually here is the Logic Op. And what that allows you to do is really do some layering operations. So we can take both of these clips and maybe we'll even put the matte in there. And if you look at Logic Op, all your blend nodes that you might recognize from Photoshop and then some that you may not recognize, like XOR or XNOR, are in there. These are a bit different. I haven't used them as much, but the ones you go to that you know for creative effects like hard light and soft light and overlay, screen and multiply, they're all there, and it's, you know, it's a simple node that gives you access to those functions. We have a LUT editor, so if you have a LUT and you need to edit it, it does what it says. Map Convert lets you take, if you have an HDR that was shot in, say, a cubic fashion or or a polar, you can use this, and I'll just double without hooking anything up because I don't really have a file to put in there. But you can go from, there it is, from Cartesian to polar to cubic, so you can change from any one of these matte inputs into another. Handy if you're doing some work with HDR images. Again, we touched on the master keyer, which we saw before. We have Matchbox. Now what this is, these are like really a set of filters built on or written in GLSL shading language. 6, 7, so about 20 or some presets for you to play with. What else is an interesting one? Again, we have another glow, Z-glow, vignetting, twirl, a color replace. I think we tried the cross-hatching before. We can actually try the posterize. It's interesting. Click on this one. It says some of them actually even say GLSL, so that lets you see what that is. So posterize, and again, it can be tweaked. You take it down to just 2 colors. Tweak the gamma. Very fast shaders, very fast effects, and that is Matchbox. And it can take some of them can take multiple inputs, and you can actually go between them. This particular one. Actually, we'll keep that clip up there. So that is Matchbox. Let's keep moving. Matte curves will let you are like your curves that you would find in Photoshop to help you blend your matte, as well as a matte edge. Mono, very simple and kind of self-explanatory, just makes it mono, but it lets you choose, you know, where you want to pull that black and white image from. Motif is an interesting node. It's very much like a Kaleidoscope, a Kaleidoscope function, but it's interactive. You can move it, you can change the shape of it or the mode of it. So that's a region of interest. Let's see if we can, there you go. So we can make that so it's a square, triangle, and I believe we can move the center around. And again, it's all animatable. You can add some softness to blend between the two, the way it repeats, and position and scale. So it's all animatable. Interesting, good to have. You never know when it's going to come in handy. Motion analysis. You would use motion analysis and motion blur go hand in hand, and these are great if you have CG footage, so that you can compute your motion blur in a post process. So we can even feed this image into the motion analysis and see it. And what that's doing is creating an image that really doesn't make sense initially, but what these are is the color values represent motion vectors, and then you would pipe that into your motion blur, or actually pipe that into your motion blur and your image into the front, and it should apply it. So I'm not sure if we're really getting much motion out of the water right now. Some, let's see if we can get amount 0. So if we crank that up a little bit. Now it's still fairly computationally intensive, but not so much as if you tried to do it in your 3D application. Negative, simple, does what it says. Optics is again another way to create a glow. And let's put that the front and back, or front and back and matte. Plug it all in, and actually. And we'll turn on the front. You can see it's picking up some color. Let's try inverting it. It's a creative tool that's been in the Autodesk tool set for a while. It creates some glows, but you can again kind of see, create some posterization as well, and create all kinds of interesting effects with it. And that's optics. We have paint. Now paint is interesting. It'll actually let you pipe in multiple inputs and reveal to each one, as well as you can just, if you needed to just paint on there, you can do that as well. There are a number of ways to do it. You can pipe in your matte, a number of different brushes, and it'll let you do certain amount of paint fixes. Pixel spread, it's hard to describe a really, actually it's not that hard to describe. Pixel spread allows you, based on a matte input, let's see if it shows it here. Okay, based on a matte input, will repeat edge pixels to fill out a matte. So say you've got a key, but there's just the edge is, you can still see a little bit of an edge there, whether it's gray or white, because you're trying to pre-multiply it into a background. Using pixel spread, it'll take those it'll take the last color pixels and spread them out to the edge of the matte, thus filling it out, and it really helps clear up mattes, especially when you start getting to certain fine details or certain detailed edges. I find it really handy. Posterize, a node by itself just to create posterization, similar to what we have in Matchbox. Quick comp is really what it says it is. It'll let you do basically an A over B comp. So you'd pipe in a front, a back, and a matte, and that's what you get. It has very little, very few parameters, which means it's going to be able to compute very fast. And if you have things like, say, CG layers that are pretty much already going to line up, it's a great node to use. Very low overhead, very quick to compute. ReGrain, so if you've averaged something or degrained it before to get your key nice and clean, but you want it to look like it really sets into this backplate that was filmed, you're going to end up using ReGrain. Recursive ops. Let's see, that we can plug that in front, and let's take a matte. That lets you give some, how to describe it, well, recursive operations. So like the crumple distort, it's doing that plus a blur, but it's iterating that. So it has an amplitude and a time offset. So over time it is, adding up that effect over and over again with the parameters that are set. And you can get some really kind of interesting effects. You can see it's doing a position, it's a scale, as well as repeating the image a number of times using the crumple distort. It's really something to be experimented with and really have fun, because you can get some stuff out. You can get some interesting looks out of that. So we touched on the ReGrain Separate. Lets you actually separate out your image into multiple channels. So you can choose it to be RGB, YUV, and you can see on the back side each has a separate tab. That's our Separate. We have Resize, which is the same as the one in the timeline. Sparks and Sparks Load. And Sparks Load. Sorry about that. We have the Sparks and Sparks Load. Again, these are for the plugins. Primary supplier of them comes from GenArts. If you're working in stereo, we have a stereo node. Stylized node. Again, this is another creative one, another thing to create some looks thing. And Stylize is interesting in that number one, it has a ton of presets. Confirm that because it's replacing everything, and that's like a nice misty semi-posterized. And the other interesting thing is, just like so many of the nodes that can be customized, Stylize is actually a multiple layers all put together, and you can see they also each have their own blending mode, soft, light, average, and sometimes it's just a blend. There are a number of these that are really just great. The newspaper ones are interesting. Gives it a really flattened, posterized. I mean, I think I really find these quite handy in so many ways, and this just gives it a paper texture. And that would be our Stylize. And text, just same as in the timeline, node unto itself. And time warp allows you to control, be able to time warp the footage within a node. And then there's this little thing that has no name to it. But what that allows you to do, by dragging that in, you can actually make notes in here. So if you are working on something later, or you're handing this off to someone else, you can make notes to, remember to check the blue channel. And then you can keep that in there just as a way to hand information off from one to another. One other node that I'm going to touch on, and we're going to go up here to our footage, is the MUX node. And this is like a utility. This is a utility node. It's not like, it is a utility node. And it's great because you can use this as a point to really connect other things off of. And the great thing about the MUX node is it also has some things in here too. Say, for whatever reason, you wanted to keep this off to the side and use your MUX node as really your point to hook everything up. You can actually hide that input so it doesn't look like it's connected. Honestly, that becomes a bit deceiving. But if you have a really complicated setup and lines are crossing too much, you may want to do that. Additionally, there's some timing offsets, so you can adjust some timing within the MUX node, as well as telling it to what range you want, whether it's from frame 1 to 1, or let's see if we can put it to frame 30 to 30, and that should be the same frame that we're on. So right now here, actually, since this is a high-res red file, and I want to kind of walk through this, decently fast with you, so you're not waiting too long. Let's set to active. We'll lock it down to 1 frame, and we'll tell it to repeat first and repeat last. So no matter where we go, we're just looking at that frame. Now we're into action. And as I said before, action is really kind of a super node. And the fact that we had all of these nodes in the effects bin, and these are all of our batch nodes. Now going into action has its own bin of nodes just to use. A lot of them have to do with the look of things, like we have lens flares and lights and a perspective grid, diffuse maps and displacement maps, blooming and things like that. But we also have certain objects like 3D text, axes, just to be able to control your images, FBX camera, so if you have something coming out of any kind of 3D program where you can save the FBX, you can bring that camera in. Really great interop opportunities there for motion graphics and 3D material. if we're working in stereo, you can set up a stereo object. We have our shadow caster, which will cast your shadow based on your light. Lens flares and rays, as well as materials to put onto 3D text or other 3D objects. You can go to import and bring in actual 3D geometry, as well as we have a host of presets. So let's take a look here and get started with action. The first thing we want to decide, though, is do we want to key our footage, key our talent within action, or do we want to have the key coming in? Personally, most of the time, I actually like to control my key. I like to implement the key outside of action. So we're going to quickly do a key of our talent here, and we're going to use the MUX node again as our point for our footage. And actually, I take that back. Let's take this resize so that is the same size as our background. So that's going to be the front and our matte material. And we'll take our actual background as our background. Let's look at what our matte looks like. It's not too bad, but we still need to go into some FX nodes. So we'll go to and keep that look. And let's look down here. I want a 2D histogram to go into that. And we'll see, that choking down a little bit up there. X node. I'm going to put a demask in here. And I'm going to set that to the outside. Now that's the result. Front. Okay, have to do that, and then we'll do a logic up. And I will do multiply, so thus getting rid of that. And actually, I'm going to soften our G-mask a little. There we go. So that bit that was there just made a black spot, and you multiply it in. Maybe a bit kind of geeky in this, but I really love the procedural nature of Connect effects. So now we have our front. The matte is turned off, so now we want to turn the matte on. And there, she's coming along there. The front bit, we can see that there is a bit of green spill in the hair. And just like we touched on before, this is what the color curves are good for. So we're going to take that and we'll drop that right in there. Double click on it. Our suppression, we want to average, well, I'm going to average that green just to make sure I get a nice bit. I'm going to plot where that green is. And let's bring that down. And that's looking pretty decent. If we look now, very little. Let's set that to fit. That one to fit as well. Next to no green spill in there. Pretty fast. We could actually open up probably our color curves just a little bit more. See if we can zoom in down here. Oops, didn't want to grab the node. That's what I was looking to do. So we can open this up a little bit more. There, green spill disappearing even more. Brilliant. Okay, set that, and we'll go to fit. Look at our action. Great. Now the great thing about that is that we have the front coming in, and we can continue to kind of color correct that without affecting our key color. So I'm going to drop that in there, and I'm actually just going to up her contrast a little bit and give her skin tone a little bit more warmth. Actually, let's reset that. Highlights, I'm going to make a little warmer. Shadows will pull a little cooler. Just a bit of stylization there. Now let's make the shadows a little darker. She's really not looking like the background. Sorry to get a bit picky on that. She's not as natural, but it's matching it with some kind of colors of the background. Could probably just actually take that out. Or actually, I'm going to take it in, set it, reset, and really just bring some of our color back. Our skin tone's getting close to the background. Anyway, this is a just trying to give you guys a good demonstration of, you know, how I would particularly do this last shot. Getting back into action, so we have her keyed in there, and we can see that you know, she is an object within this space that we can move around. If I can grab the front there, we can move into Z space. A special thing to note, and let's look at our action schematic. If we double click on her and look at our object, you can see I've moved it in Z some. Let's reset that. And we have this thing called auto scale, which has really come in handy. So you can set it to all transform, select that, and then we can move her forward or backward in Z, but she really doesn't appear to move. And let's take a look at the top view here. And you can kind of see what's going on. It's auto scaling it to fit the frustum of the camera. Thus, she always appears in the same place. And this is great for bringing in, say, a layered Photoshop file, which we can import. You tick that on, and you very quickly can set up a multiplane shot so that you can move your camera around and get that little bit of parallax to help sell some movement. It's a really handy thing to have. Okay, so we have her in there. Now let's put some lights in here. Okay, right there it's in back of her. Let's try and move it in front. Come on, light. There we go. Sometimes you just have to move it by the numbers. There, she's getting lighter. Let's see where our light is. Slowly getting there. And let's add in actually another light. There, that one is. And can we move that one back? Let's send that one back in space by. Take that view and set it back to our action schematic. Easier to select your images. You can actually rename these. So I'll rename this as Helps if I could spell, but yeah, let's actually correct that. To actually put its intensity up a little bit. There we go. Backlight. And here we can apply some of the effects that we have. And let's try a lens flare. So we take that light, and if we move it off to the side, there we go. The great thing about these lens flares is that they actually respect the matte channel when you do a key. So you get this really natural occlusion. And what's brilliant is that it bleeds over the edge as it shines out. And all of these, as you can see from the schematic, the lens flares are highly customizable. You can take individual elements and hide them or replace them altogether. And double-clicking on any of them brings up a number of values, which will allow you to customize them. So for that glow, up the number to increase the glow. And again, every individual thing can be animated as well. So let's see if we can move that around. Maybe we want to put it over there. Just take that number back down. It's a little bit too much. In addition to the lens flares, which are great to have, let's see, are also the light rays. Really interesting. Really appearing to be fully volumetric. Let's open the spread up. And again, the light rays are similar in the fact that they respect the alpha channel and can come shooting out and around. Again, this is something that sometimes people would go to a plugin for, but they're built in here into Smoke, and they work in a full 3D space. Let's see if we can get that. Where's my view? So we can. Here are a ton of tools, and as well as their keyboard shortcuts. So orbit space O. So if we look at that and kind of see how they are separated off in space. She's way in front of these lights. You can see that. You can see how some of the artifacts, some of the lens flare elements are out there in space as well. To undo orbit just to get back to where we were and set myself back to select. So you can really create, you have all the tools to do your keying, creative effect. Oh, and let's take one more look at how we can really work within this. And this is really where I would say, some of the magic and or beauty of the way Connect Effects works. Let's look at the effect nodes. And let's say Stylize. Stylize is a great one to grab. So I'm going to grab that. Let's set this. If you constantly want to see what the output looks like, you can select on something and say Set as Context. And now we'll set this view to be Context 1. So no matter what we do upstream, we will see just the result of that. So Stylize, we can drop this into the background. To the background, you can see it kind of getting whatever the default effect is here. I'm not sure if it has a name. But say we want to set it to something like, I don't know, charcoal. Very different stylized look. Or what about expressionism? Where does that go? We can try a couple of these out, see if any of them one appeals to us any more than another. That's interesting. It's just a kind of a diffusion to the background. Let's put something with just a little bit more of a heavy thumbprint on it. There we go. Nice posterized look. So that's kind of the beauty of Connect Effects, is that, you know, we already had our composition, our composite, pretty well done, set up here in action, but, you know, we wanted to go back and affect something. Rather than having to rebuild everything, it's really just inserting a node. And maybe for some reason or another, maybe the art director wants the whole image to look that way. That would be really just as simple as moving it from one node to the next and looking at the result there. Now, I don't think that color particularly suits her well, so I'm going to switch it back, and we can have it just affecting the background. Connect Effects really lets you work in a non-linear nature and building up looks and building up styles that that leave you flexibility to make adjustments for clients in the end. And I think that's where a great deal of the power of Connect Effects is. And that's our overview for Connect Effects. I'm hoping that this, you know, help filled you in on any of the gaps, as well as answered questions. And let's set that to render while we talk here. Select this clip and hit render. You know, I hope this gave you a good overview and a reference of so many of the menus and functions within Smoke 2013. It's very deep, and you know, there's stuff to be discovered for a long time yet. You know, there are still functions that even after using Smoke for many, many years that I sometimes still discover because they aren't part of my daily workflow. And I think that's what keeps it interesting, is that we've made it simple enough for anyone to jump in right from the beginning, but yet we've made it deep enough to keep you interested and giving you the tools that you need for still a long time to come. Speaking of tools, let's not forget the Tools tab. There's a new addition to PR2. A lot of these buttons we've already covered as nodes in Connect Effects, so we won't dive too deep into those, but we'll touch on a few of them, and let's just start from the top. First is the Paint tool. And one thing to note is nearly any of these tools that we use down here, these buttons, will generate a new piece of media. It's not just adding a soft effect to your clip. So let's take Paint. We'll jump into that. And I think one of the more notable probably things about Paint is its ability to animate and track strokes. And do a quick example of that. So we'll go into Auto Paint, and we'll just grab something like Clone, and let's set our clone point here, and let's just paint out this blotch right here, and we'll just keep it, you know, I'm not going to get fancy with it, just quick and dirty. And you click on play, and let's see, click on animation and turn on wireframe, and you can see the stroke there, and the second you get a second timeline, and that's the duration of your strokes. And right now you can see it just slowly filling it in, and we actually want it to be completely painted on the first frame, and then we want to be able to track it. So for that we jump into the stabilizer, and we can pretty much even just track the point, one of the points that we're painting. Turn off fixed, and we'll analyze forward. Just return to that, and we'll just start processing it to really show what the end result is. So tracking off the point of the blotch that we're painting out, and it's tracking those strokes from that first clone along with it, so it stays really consistent. And when it's done, we can just go into the player to double check it. You can see it's not jittering, it's not boiling, you know. It's following along frame for frame, and that's one of the great things about the auto paint and being able to track those strokes. In addition to that, if you go into the canvas, you have a ton of other filters of special effects. So you can select on filter and do something you know, odd like negative, and just paint on the frame, as well as just normally painting, which can sometimes be used as a nice little like diagnostic tool for going over with clients, saying, you know, we want to touch the key here, move her over to the right. it's not a grand feature, but honestly, it really comes in handy, and it's great to have in one hand. Get rid of that clip. Text tools a node, gradient node. A lot of these filters are. These field tools are especially useful, and are being this progressive material. They aren't as much of use to us here, but they're great fix-it tools. Field merge, reverse dominance to fix something that may have been brought in wrong or was laid off wrong before it even came to you if you're coming from tape. It's a lot of those kind of, for lack of a better word, forensic tools that you can use to really break down and fix things when really there aren't many other tools out there to fix them. Page 1, and then in page 2 you have some similar things, not quite as forensic, but like burn-in letterbox. So if you set your image up to have a particular letterbox, you burn that down into the media. Timecode, if you're going to send things out to maybe a client for review, so that you know that you're both talking about a particular frame or a particular point in time code. Say that your key code or time code came in wrong, so you have those buttons as well as a convert rate, which will allow you to convert between different frame rates. We also have a few of the stereo tools here. If you happen to be doing 3D stereoscopic work, Smoke does handle that and handles it well. That I think should be subject for another webinar that will cover that. But some of the tools to deal with the clips and filters are right there. And that is the new Tools tab. It's a quick overview of it. And let me just see if there's any other tools that we really need to touch on. Well, the audio mixdown is in filters, and that's specific audio tool. It's not even for picture, and that really couldn't have existed in Connect Effects. Yeah, and I think we've kind of covered it. A lot of them are self-explanatory. Flip does what it says. It flips, and that's it. That's the new Tools tab, and explore it. I hope that you've enjoyed this webinar, and I hope it's really kind of helped fill in some information. This concludes part 2 of our Smoke 2013 webinar, an interface reference. Remember, we've extended the public preview, so go and download that right now. You can find it on the area at area.autodesk.com/smoke or on smokeischanging.com. Once you've downloaded that trial, in addition to these webinars, here are some additional resources. I hope this webinar has been fun and informative, and I look forward to seeing you all around the area. Take care.